if we didn't tip it enough, let's tip it now. We are going to be joined now by a wonderful guest. He is the executive editor of the American Prospect. He has been following and tracking all of the insanity and also helping us understand, hey, what does the government do? Please welcome David Dayen. David.
Hey, guys.
Thank you so much. Welcome
us.
to America Unhinged. David, you've been tracking ever since this OMB memo was put out, the rescinding of it, not real rescinding of it. We're still sort of in this limbo of what government agencies are being funded and which ones are not, and which agencies are being impacted and which ones are not. Tell us what you know of like what is actually what kind of funding is being held up right now? What have you heard from these agencies? Just today, I believe, was it the EPA that was also stormed in addition to NOAA? I mean, like every single, in addition to the USAID and Treasury, are being hacked by these, little virgins.
Well, there's a lot going on sort of in parallel. So one thing that you just talked about is the attempts to commandeer pretty much every IT system within the government. These are, the IT workers from hell that are coming into these various agencies, including the systems that actually pay out benefits. In Treasury in particular, this is probably the most dangerous thing that's being done. The system that pays out $1.4 billion or 1.4 billion payments, totaling about $5.5 trillion a year. That has been, it's in the hands of the Doge folks, and it's very unclear what level of access they have. But it is clear, what we did learn today is that 4 days into the administration, they attempted to use that system to cut off all loans and grants to the U.S. Agency for International Development. And this is the fear that we all had when we learned that they got in, trying to get into the Treasury Department payment system, is that they can use that to sort of extrajudicially turn off spending they don't like.
Yeah.
So that's the real danger. And apparently that was rebuffed. And then the guy who rebuffed them, he was basically forced out. And so now they have that access to the plumbing of the federal government. So far, it's just really scary, not only for whether they will use it in that fashion, but if they just break it, which is almost worse, because then you're talking about all the systems, all of the payments made by the federal government, including your grandmother's Social Security check, including Medicare payments, and including all of these
tax
other things.
returns.
So, super dangerous.
Meals on Wheels,
tax
Medicaid.
Tax refunds, exactly. And what do you mean by that, permanently breaking? Can I just ask you, like, because the other question is like, how strong was the federal, the Treasury's data systems and all these agencies' data systems to begin with? It seems like maybe they needed more protections and an upgrade. So the fact that they're being sort of hollowed out is extra terrifying.
They were very strong and they were very smooth. I mean, we make that many payments that I mentioned, 1.4 billion a year, and 100% of them are paid out, right? So I mean, it has to be perfect, and that's why there are redundancies in the system to make sure that it's perfect. Because even if one payment is, if there's a failure in one part of the system, that can be catastrophic. So the system goes all the way back. I mean, a lot of it is in what is known as the COBOL programming language, which like dates back to the 50s, like when computers were the size of this room, right? So it's very redundant. It's very deliberate. They spend years trying to upgrade just to make sure in any eventuality, if there is something that is a discrepancy, that they catch it. They take a long, long time. And now the move fast and break things people are coming in, and they're just, sticking a screwdriver into this system, and who knows what's going to happen. So that's like the sort of mortal terror level of danger. The other things that are more normal are just the politicization of these payments. So we had this Office of Management and Budget memo that was put out that said, we're going to put a pause on all grants and loans to see if they're woke. That was essentially the order, right?
Yep.
And there were 2 restraining orders put out against this memo, and the memo was ultimately rescinded. The problem is, and what we're learning is, when you turn off something in the federal government, it's not so easy to turn it back on again. And so we're hearing reports from nonprofits, entities that receive money from the federal government all over the country, whether it's a Head Start program or whether it's just a grantee that's supposed to get a certain amount of money, that ever since that was shut off, they can't shut it back on again. And these entities really live hand to mouth. They don't get a lump sum like, hey, we're the federal government, we're granting you this Head Start program for 2024. Here's all your money. That's not how it works.
Your daycare is paid for the whole year.
That's not how it works. It works that you, Head Start program, need money. You query the payment system, and then the payment system gives you what you need to pay rent or payroll on a daily basis. So even one day or 1 week of those lost payments can be catastrophic. They'll have to lay people off. They'll have to furlough people, and people won't get the services that they get out of that. Young children won't get the ability to, have daycare. Older people with disabilities who just need to go to the grocery store and need a little help, that service may be shut down, and they're not able to do that. So it's really catastrophic. And then there's a third level, right? So we've talked about the Treasury Department payment system. We talked about this OMB memo. Even beyond that, there are programs that Donald Trump attempted to delete via executive order. So one of those are the things you were talking about, the EPA. There was a part of one of the executive orders that said terminating the Green New Deal, as if we have a Green New Deal.
When did that pass? When did that pass? Let me know.
Exactly. So it basically meant anything in the Inflation Reduction Act or in the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was energy related, that was clean energy related, all of that has to be paused. And that, by the way, is also illegal, unconstitutional, violates various statutes and Supreme Court precedents. But they're still doing that because it didn't rely on that memo. It relied on, they're alleging the authority from the executive order. Yeah. And so that stuff is also on pause. Same with foreign aid, which was also paused via executive order. And that includes, mass programs of feeding people, the PEPFAR program, which gives AIDS drugs to people, 20 million people, I believe, all over the world. So there are many levels and layers to this, and they all have different, attacks, essentially. And there are all different lawsuits designed to stop those things.
David, before we get into some of these lawsuits and specifically, some of the damage, the long-term damage that will be done and some of the programs that probably will not be able to be resuscitated, can we take a step back real quick? Can you give me the ideology, the long-term plan, the strategy? What is the long-term goal of Musk and Doge and the Broligarchy to come here and break stuff? And by break stuff, I mean literally break the government. And I'm sure you were listening to us. We just found out today, USAID going to lose essentially its entire workforce, right? They're going into the Treasury Department. They have access to all of our financial data. They can turn the spigot on, the spigot off. They're going to go after EPA. They're going to go after Department of Labor. What is the long-term goal here?
Long-term goal, I think if you talk to Musk, he's like, oh, I'm just making things more efficient. I'm just using our vast knowledge in Silicon Valley to make things better for everybody in America and get a revolution going again. What they're really doing is they're trying to centralize control in the president and grant the president radical new authorities to decide what gets funded and what doesn't, basically irrespective of Congress's wishes. So this is a radical reordering of the governmental system. It essentially deletes Congress. If Congress passes a law and says, we're going to fund national parks, and the president says, I don't like national parks, and so, I'm going to get rid of that, then you don't have a Congress, right? Yeah. I mean, you have a Congress kind of as a vestigial organ. in name only. It's just an appendix, really. So that's the fear. I mean, that's the real attempt here. And this was all deliberate, right? Project 2025. Russell Vought, who was just confirmed as the budget director in the White House, created an entire MAGA group called the Center for Renewing America, which was saying the president has the right to cancel spending and to limit spending and to rescind spending for whatever reason that he wants. He's been saying this for 4 years, and ever since Trump left office. And they are spoiling for this fight. They want the court challenges. They want to go to the Supreme Court, where they think they can get the ruling from the conservative Supreme Court that they want, that the president can delete or limit spending that he doesn't like.
Yeah, what is it? What's the thing they call where it's like king power? I forgot the official the official interpretation. The official interpretation.
The technical word is impoundment.
I meant the interpretation of the Constitution as being sort of
the unitary executive.
Yes, the unitary executive theory of power. But talk about impoundments. Talk about specifically, why is this illegal? Why does Congress matter in all of this?
Yeah. So you go back to the early days of the Republic, and often what Congress would say is that spend X amount of money up to X amount of dollars. And the president was given that wiggle room. Like, I could spend less, or I could spend up to that amount. That changed over the years. Congress got a little more assertive and said, actually, what you need to spend, we have the power of the purse, and this is what you need to spend. And presidents didn't like that, and they rebelled against that. And particularly Richard Nixon tried to impound funds, basically saying, I don't want to spend money on that, I'm taking it away. Congress then reacted by creating a law called the Impoundment Control Act. And so many people in Congress supported it that Richard Nixon, who was intended to rebut, actually signed the law, right? So the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 says presidents cannot rescind or delay spending that's duly passed in appropriations by Congress, except under these very strict conditions. Yeah. None of which have been followed by these guys in the first 3 weeks of their presidency.
Basically, if Trump wins, then yes, you could do anything you want.
Right. So the Impoundment Control Act really is the controlling authority here. You can't rescind funds. You can ask to rescind funds, but then Congress has to say, yes, we're going to rescind those funds. You can delay funds for a short period of time. However, you have to have very specific reasons and give a message to Congress on why you're delaying the funds. And it can't just be, I don't like it. Like it can't be political. It has to be, well, we found a more efficient way of doing this, or we, you passed a different law and these are contradictory, blah, blah, blah. So the president is violating that. There's almost no doubt about it. And there's plenty of Supreme Court precedent to back that up. In fact, both John Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh, when they were in the White House, there are memos showing that both of them said, you're not allowed to do that. There are specific memos that say impoundment is not an authority that the president has under the Impoundment Control Act. So I think Russ Vought and some of the real radical MAGA types think that they can get the Supreme Court to change their mind.
Right.
But that's the fight that they're spoiling.
And that Trump is maybe, I mean, this is the other question, does this fall into the things that Trump is above the law in?
That's the unanswered question, right? I mean,
absolute immunity.
Let's say that, this fight goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, no, you can't impound funds. You cannot delete spending that you don't like. And then Trump says, make me. And then we're in the upside down. Then who knows what happens with that?
I mean, yeah, that's why we're calling this a constitutional crisis, and I think others are. I wanted to ask you more specifically about two entities and agencies. Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, who was confirmed by 15 Democrats. I'm sorry, Democratic senators. effectively shut down the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau, as well as fired. I don't know if Scott did, but someone from the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, was let go, rendering that body ineffective. Can you just talk about what the CFPB does and what this means?
So we can talk about both of those in kind if you want. So CFPB was an agency that was established out of the financial crisis of 2008 and the Great Recession. And it basically took all of the consumer protection laws, which were in the hands of a bunch of different agencies that weren't really paying attention to consumer protection, frankly, and said, we're going to make one agency and their entire mission is protecting consumers. And it's been wildly successful. It's returned $20 billion to consumers over the course of its lifetime, which isn't very long. It has established many new laws protecting consumers in a variety of different ways, most in financial transactions, whether it's limiting bank overdraft fees, limiting the junk fees that are given on credit cards when you have a late fee. They were an average of $32 for each month on the late fee. Now they're $8. They banned medical debt from credit reports, and they have all sorts of authority over credit reports, credit bureaus that ding your credit sometimes erroneously. That's really the tip of the iceberg. It's a whole bunch of other stuff.
So putting money back into the pockets of like regular people, protecting regular people.
And just having an agency whose sole mission is that is really dedicated to the consumer. If you have a problem, if you've been ripped off, you can go to their consumer complaint database. They investigate that. They engage in litigation and enforcement, and they supervise various laws. And now they're doing nothing because Rohit Chopra was the very great Biden appointee, head of the Bureau. Under a Supreme Court ruling in 2020, it is legal for presidents to fire the head of the CFPB once they get into office. In fact, Biden did that on day one to put in Rohit Chopra. So, it took a couple weeks and Wall Street was getting a little worried because why is Rohit Chopra still here, guys? But eventually they did get around to it last Saturday. And since then, they put Besant, who is the head of the Treasury Department. He is the acting head of the CFPB right now. And as soon as he got it, and the first thing he did was say, we're going to pause everything. Pause litigation. We're going to pause enforcement. You're not going to make any settlements. You're not going to do anything.
David, I want to ask you two quick questions before we leave you, and our audience really appreciates you breaking it down. Thanks so much. You're getting a lot of raves. In addition to going after the CFPB, they also want to go after the SEC, FTC, any authority or body that holds Doge and
any letters that are stitched together.
Any scary letters and consonants that actually can hold the rich people and corrupt accountable. Speaking about accountability, I want to ask you two quick questions. You had this really sobering tweet. And I want to quote your tweet here about the failure of mainstream media in actually articulating the threat, in naming the threat, and the reasons why mainstream media and the owners of mainstream media might be complicit. In your tweet, you said, quote, why has Patrick Soon-Shiong, the owner of LA Times, touted RFK Jr. repeatedly and run interference with him at his paper, the LA Times? Maybe because his biotech company has 3 applications pending at the FDA, whose parent agency Kennedy is about to be running. I mean, that was shocking. Just break that down for us if you can. The intersection here between money, media, and this breakdown of
we wrote a story about this prospect.org. Anyone who's in LA, I'm in LA, Francesca, I know you're in LA, knows that Soon-Shiong has sort of gone on a bender here at the LA Times, where he refused to allow endorsements on the editorial page. He blocked editorials that were critical of Trump and his nominees. And just a couple days ago, there was an op-ed that was critical of RFK that was supposed to run the LA Times. And the LA Times took out some of the more critical parts of it and then totally changed the headline to say, RFK would be great, even though that isn't the content of the editorial. And so I was thinking about this, and Patrick Soon-Shiong is a doctor, and he has a biotech firm. It's called Immunity Bio. So I wondered, well, why is he so gung ho RFK? I mean, it's crazy. If you go to his Twitter feed and you look, he's even complimented Kennedy's physique. Like he
Oh boy.
posted a video. He posted a video of Kennedy doing pull-ups, and he said, "Not many 70-year-olds could do that." Like that is about as
He's all roided
thirsty as
up.
you can get. Yeah.
So thirsty.
So why
Thirsty
is
for
he
the
doing all
brainworms.
this? Right. Why is he doing all this? And so I went to Soon-Shiong's company, Immunity Bio, and said, are they looking for anything from the government? What's going on here? And in a press release on January 15th, they explained that they are about to issue 3 applications to get approval from the Food and Drug Administration, which is an agency whose parent agency is the Health and Human Services Department, what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be running here in a little bit. So, you follow the money, and it's pretty clear that Soon-Shiong doesn't want any problems with those particular FDA approvals. And we saw in the first term of Trump, especially media figures, if there was anything that they said that was negative towards Trump, he would try to go after them through things that they wanted that the government could control. You remember the AT&T Time Warner merger? He hated CNN, and he asked his team, "We have to block that merger," and he did it. He tried to do it. They ended up getting the merger through. Same thing with the Bezos Washington Post. And so media moguls have learned this lesson. The billionaires have learned this lesson. They're all sucking up to Trump.
Yeah.
And this is an example of that. And now we know exactly why in the case of Patrick Soon-Shiong.
They're throwing down. They know where their bread is buttered, and the class war is on. Working people are losing it, and they're deciding which side they're on. They're not even pretending anymore. Everyone should support Prospect Magazine, the American Prospect, prospect.org. David and the team there has just done an incredible job of covering this, and just incredible job of covering the ways that we're all being ripped off. And it's so wonderful. I also write for the American Prospect, so shout out to me.
Absolutely.
But I want to ask you just an honest question before I play you a clip of Senator Chris Murphy, which is what extent do you think that electeds right now, specifically the Senate, can actually fight this? They are obviously, they didn't really put their bodies on the line here with the Russell vote. I mean, they stayed up late, but they didn't lock in. They didn't get pepper sprayed, right? There was
no sleeping bags. That's what she's saying.
I don't know if I saw sleeping bags, but here's what Chris Murphy said. I believe this was this morning, obviously before Russell was confirmed.
People understand that we are the minority party. We don't run the White House. We are the minority in the House and in the Senate. But we need to act like a real opposition party in the middle of a constitutional and democracy crisis. That means we should not be moving forward nominees or legislation in the United States Senate. Democrats should not be giving votes to nominees or to legislation in the United States Senate until Republicans get serious about this crisis. Democrats should not help Republicans raise the debt ceiling in order to pass their massive tax cut for billionaires and millionaires. Democrats should be leading public gatherings all weekend, all across the country, to bring Americans out to show Republicans that they will pay a price. And then Democrats need to speak in really stark terms about what is going on.
To be fair, he does look underslept. I'll just say that. But David, I mean, what are your thoughts, having covered so much of what happens in DC and knowing these people, onto how much they can do and how much they're willing to actually be this oppositional party?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think that the substance of what Chris Murphy was saying there is generally correct, that Democrats shouldn't be giving, consent to this attempted hostile takeover of the U.S. government. Is there more that they can do? Yeah, I think there is. The U.S. Senate kind of operates on this concept of unanimous consent. So if one senator wants to make life miserable for the U.S. Senate, they can, and they can do it in ways that are go much deeper than an overnight sleepover party, whatever they did for Russell Vought to sort of just highlight attention, and it didn't go very far. They can do a lot more, and they should recognize this for the crisis that it is. But I mean, Murphy alluded to some things that actually are going to give Democrats more leverage. One is the fact that government funding expires next month, and the other is the debt ceiling. Right. And at this point, given what Republicans are doing in office, given what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are up to, I think that they absolutely have to get major concessions out of those things. Stop this assault on the government. Stop this assault on the separation of powers, and pull back on everything that you're doing. And they really need to have a united front on that.
Exactly. David, they need to get their caucus in line for that.
Yeah. David, thanks so much for joining us. Please shamelessly promote yourself. How can our listeners and viewers support you, support your writing?
Yeah, well, we're at prospect.org, and every day, every minute, at this point, we're putting up news stories. We're giving you new information that you need about ideas, politics, and power. So prospect.org is where that is. And, we're on, I guess I'm still on Twitter, but I'm mostly on Blue Sky at ddayen.bluesky.social. You can check me there.
And get the magazine. It's so nice to have it in your hands. So few so few print mags these days. So just a little plug to actually subscribe to the American Prospect and have it come to your house.
Francesca's columns there as well.
Read my columns, exactly.
That's right. The back page. That's where we get Francesca.
Biden bumped me 1 month. I will say that.
He did.
Damn you, Biden. David, thanks so much.
Joseph, thank you, David.
Join us anytime.
Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications. For exclusive content and to support our independent, unfiltered journalism, head over to Zeteo.com. Your support matters.